The rich bride shoved a microphone into the poor caterer's hand and smiled as if kindness had never lived inside her mouth. "Sing," Vanessa Whitmore said, her diamond bracelet flashing under the ballroom lights. "Since you were making noise in my kitchen, entertain my guests." The room laughed before the girl even opened her mouth. Maya Brooks stood beside a tower of champagne glasses, her black catering jacket stained with cranberry sauce, while the groom slowly rose from his chair like he had just heard a ghost breathe his name. 3 hours earlier, Maya had been in the back hallway of the Whitmore wedding venue, balancing 2 silver trays against her hip while the kitchen doors swung open and closed behind her. The ballroom beyond those doors looked like money had been poured into every corner. White roses climbed the pillars. Crystal chandeliers hung low enough to catch in a careless hand. A string quartet played near the marble staircase, soft and clean, while guests in tailored suits and silk gowns moved like they owned the air. Maya moved differently. She kept her shoulders narrow, her steps quiet, her eyes trained for danger. A glass too close to the edge, a child reaching for a candle, a drunk uncle leaning into the dessert table. She had worked enough luxury weddings to know the rules. Be invisible. Smile when insulted. Fix problems before rich people knew they existed. Her name tag read MAYA in small black letters. Around her neck, tucked beneath her collar, rested a tiny gold pendant shaped like a music note. It had belonged to her grandmother, the only person who ever told her that a voice was not something to be ashamed of. "Table 12 needs more champagne," the head server whispered, pushing past her. "And don't go near the bride unless she calls you." Maya nodded. "Got it." At the far end of the ballroom, Vanessa stood in her wedding gown, surrounded by bridesmaids in champagne-colored dresses. She was beautiful in the expensive way. Every curl pinned, every eyelash placed, every smile measured for cameras. She kissed cheeks, showed her ring, and laughed loudly whenever someone mentioned how lucky Julian Hayes was. Julian stood beside her, tall and quiet in a black tux, his deep brown face calm but distant. He kept looking toward the kitchen doors, not at Vanessa. Maya noticed only because caterers noticed everything. Then the first problem happened. A junior server named Tasha slipped near the dessert station, and a tray of sauce cups tilted toward the white carpet. Maya caught the tray with one hand, but cranberry sauce splashed across her sleeve. Tasha froze.
"I'm sorry."
"I'm so sorry." "Breathe," Maya said softly. "Switch jackets with me before Mrs. Ellison sees." "But yours." "Go." Maya turned toward the service corridor, shaking sauce from her fingers. That was when she saw the wedding cake lean. Not fall. Not yet. Just lean like something inside it had given up. She stepped closer, crouched behind the dessert table, and saw a small silver cufflink lying near the baseboard. The initials VW were engraved across it. Before she could pick it up, Vanessa's voice cut through the room. "Excuse me." The bride was staring at Maya's stained sleeve. Her smile sharpened. "Were you singing back there?" Maya stood. "Just helping the team, ma'am." "No, I heard you." Vanessa turned to the guests. "Apparently the help comes with entertainment." A few people laughed. Maya's fingers closed around the cufflink. Vanessa reached for the band's microphone and stepped closer, her perfume cold and sweet. "Come on," she said, pressing the mic into Maya's hand. "Sing something for us." Maya looked past her at Julian. His face had changed. His lips parted, his eyes fixed on the music note at Maya's throat, and for one strange second the laughter around them seemed to lose its sound. Maya could have refused. She could have handed the microphone back, walked out through the service doors, and let the room keep laughing at the shape of her silence. But then she saw Tasha near the dessert table with both hands pressed to her mouth, eyes wide, already carrying blame for a cake Maya knew had not broken by accident. She saw Mrs. Ellison, the wedding planner, watching from beside the floral arch with her tablet tucked against her chest like a shield. She saw Vanessa smiling as if the whole ballroom had been built for this one. Small cruelty. Maya lowered her eyes to the microphone, then slid the silver cufflink into the pocket of her black slacks. "I'll sing," she said. The laughter grew louder, because they thought obedience was the same as surrender. Vanessa clapped once, delighted. Wonderful. Something sad. Something poor people understand. A few guests gasped, but none loudly enough to matter. Julian took half a step forward, but his father touched his arm, a warning dressed as restraint. Maya noticed. She noticed everything. She wiped cranberry sauce from her sleeve with a folded napkin, lifted the microphone with both hands, and turned not toward Vanessa, but toward the old baby grand piano near the bandstand. "May I?" she asked the pianist. The man hesitated, then moved aside. Maya sat carefully, her catering shoes tucked beneath the bench, her stained sleeve visible against the polished black wood. Her grandmother's pendant slipped out from her collar and rested against her throat. For 1 second, her thumb touched it. Then she played the first notes. No showy run, no desperate reach for applause. Just 3 low chords, steady and warm, the kind of sound that made forks stop touching plates. When Maya began to sing, the room changed before anyone agreed to let it change. Her voice was not loud at first. It rose from somewhere quiet, carrying church pews, kitchen radios, bus rides before sunrise, and every unpaid bill she had folded into a drawer without crying where anyone could see. Guests who had been smirking looked down at their champagne. A bridesmaid lowered her phone. Even Vanessa's smile faltered because the joke had stopped belonging to her. Maya did not sing for the bride. She sang the song her grandmother used to hum while pressing choir robes in their apartment, the one that said dignity did not need permission to stand. When the final note faded, no one laughed. Silence held the ballroom so tightly that the air conditioning sounded loud. Then a single clap came from the back. Not from Julian. From Tasha, crying beside the dessert table. Others followed, uncertain at first, then stronger. Vanessa's face hardened. She snatched the microphone before the applause. Could become respect. "That's enough," she said, her voice thin. "This is my wedding, not an audition." Maya stood. "Yes, ma'am." "Don't ma'am me." Vanessa turned to Mrs. Ellison. "I want her removed. Now." Mrs. Ellison walked over fast, heels tapping like a countdown. "Maya, gather your things. I'm still assigned through dinner service." "Not anymore." Her tablet screen glowed as she tapped something. "You're off the clock. No remaining pay. No gratuity pool. And I'll be reporting misconduct to the agency." Tasha stepped forward. "She didn't do anything." Maya touched her wrist. "Don't." The word was soft, but it stopped the girl from losing her job too. Maya untied her apron with fingers that did not shake until she turned away. At the service station, she saw the cake lean farther, the back support nearly loose. If it fell now, the blame would bury Tasha. Maya could have walked out. Instead, she grabbed a folded linen, slid behind the table, and braced the lower tier just long enough for the pastry chef to rush over. "The support pin is missing," Maya whispered. "Check the back left." The chef looked stunned. "How did you?" "Just check it." Behind them, Vanessa laughed too loudly for the cameras, pretending nothing had happened. Maya pulled off her name tag, placed it on the service tray, and walked toward the employee exit with no paycheck, no tips, and a stolen moment of dignity everyone had seen but no one knew how to explain. At the door, her hand brushed the cufflink in her pocket. The engraved initials pressed cold against her palm. VW. And across the ballroom, Julian Hayes was no longer looking at his bride. He was looking at the cake. The employee exit clicked shut behind Maya, but Julian still heard her voice inside his chest. He stood near the dessert table with one hand resting on the white linen, watching the pastry chef push a metal support pin back into the cake with trembling fingers. The missing piece had not been missing. It had been placed behind the floral runner, half hidden under baby's breath and gold ribbon. Exactly where a careless person would never look and exactly where a careful person might hide it. "Sir?" the chef whispered. "This cake didn't slip." Julian did not answer. Across the ballroom, Vanessa was posing with her bridesmaids again. Chin lifted, bouquet angled for the photographer, her laughter polished back into place. She looked untouched by what had happened, but Julian noticed the small things now. The way she avoided the dessert table, The way Mrs. Ellison kept checking her tablet. The way Vanessa's right cuff was bare beneath the lace sleeve of her reception robe. One silver cufflink missing. Julian's stomach tightened. His father leaned close. "Do not make a scene before the vows." Julian looked at him. A scene already happened, and it can still be contained. That word, contained, followed him as he stepped away from the table and into the private corridor behind the ballroom. 2 security men stood near the groom's suite. A framed poster hung on the wall beside them, advertising the Hayes Foundation Winter Arts Gala, the same foundation Julian's mother had built before cancer made her hands too weak to sign the last round of scholarship letters. Her face smiled from the poster, elegant and brown-skinned, pearls at her throat, eyes full of the kind of softness Julian had spent years trying not to miss. Beneath her picture were the words, "For every young voice that deserves a room." Julian stopped there longer than he meant to. A memory opened without permission. 5 years earlier, after his mother's funeral, he had sat alone in the foundation archive room with unopened grant applications stacked around him. He had been 26, rich enough to be surrounded by people and lonely enough to feel abandoned in every room. That night, he clicked on a nameless audition file labeled only MB_demo_final. No video at first, just sound. A girl singing with no studio polish, no producer tricks, only a voice that trembled once and then stood up straight. He had listened to it until sunrise. After that, he made the board approve a small emergency grant for anonymous young artists whose applications had been rejected for missing paperwork. He never knew whether MB received anything. He only knew the voice had kept him from closing the foundation his mother loved. Now that same voice had come from a woman in a stained catering jacket at his own wedding. His phone buzzed. A message from his assistant, Caleb, found service exit footage. Caterer's name is Maya Brooks. Agency says bride requested her removal. Julian typed back with stiff fingers. Pull all audio from ballroom mics. Full files only. No edits. Caleb replied almost instantly. That may anger Whitmore. Julian glanced through the corridor glass at Vanessa's father laughing beside a senator and 2 donors whose checks kept half the foundation's programs alive. Whitmore money was braided through tonight. The ballroom, the gala pledge, the scholarship expansion Julian planned to announce after the honeymoon. If he accused Vanessa publicly and failed to prove it, the story would not be rich bride humiliates worker. It would become groom abandons black bride over poor caterer's performance. Maya would be dragged worse than she already had been. The foundation would bleed donors. The girls waiting for fall scholarships would pay for a truth Julian could not yet prove. Mr. Hayes. Mrs. Ellison appeared at the corridor entrance, smiling with every tooth except her eyes. We're ready to reset for the vows. The bride is asking for you. Julian slipped his phone into his pocket. Where is the caterer? Handled. That wasn't my question. Her fingers tightened around the tablet. She was disruptive. Unfortunately, some workers mistake proximity to luxury for permission. Julian stared at her until the smile thinned. Send me the incident report. Of course. And don't delete anything. For the first time, Mrs. Ellison blinked too slowly. Behind her, in the reflection of the glass, Julian saw Vanessa watching them from the ballroom doors. One hand folded over her bare right cuff. Then his eyes dropped to the floor near the service hallway. Something small glinted beside the wall. A tiny gold backing from an earring, shaped like a music note. Not Maya's pendant, but close enough to make the past and present touch. Julian picked it up, cold metal against his palm, and wondered how many pieces of tonight had been placed exactly where someone wanted him to find them. Maya was halfway across the employee parking lot when a black Lincoln rolled to a slow stop beside the yellow curb. Its windows were tinted so dark they reflected the back of the venue instead of showing who sat inside. For one sharp second, Maya tightened her fingers around her phone and checked the distance to the security booth. Then the rear window lowered, and a young man in a navy suit leaned forward with both hands visible. Ms. Brooks? He asked. My name is Caleb. I work for Julian Hayes. Maya did not move closer. If this is about signing something, I'm not signing it. Caleb gave a small nod, like he had expected that answer. He isn't asking you to sign anything. He's asking if you'll come back inside and tell him what you saw. Maya looked past the car at the building she had just been thrown out of. The ballroom windows glowed gold above the loading dock. Through the glass, she could see shadows moving under chandeliers, people still drinking, still smiling, still pretending the world had not cracked open for a woman in a stained uniform. Tell him he can ask Mrs. Ellison, Maya said. Caleb's mouth tightened. He doesn't trust her report. That made Maya turn her head. Caleb stepped out and opened the back door, but Maya stayed where she was. The car smelled faintly of leather and cologne, a smell that belonged to men who never had to count bus fare. No, she said. I'll walk. Caleb blinked. It's cold out here. Then walk fast. He closed the door without arguing. That was the first thing Maya respected. They entered through a side corridor she had never been allowed to use. The floors changed from scuffed concrete to black marble. The walls held framed photographs of past galas. Governors, actors, CEOs, women in diamonds smiling beside donation checks large enough to buy the apartment building where Maya lived. A private security guard touched his earpiece when he saw her uniform. His eyes dropped to the sauce stain on her sleeve. Caleb said, "She's with me," and the guard stepped aside, but not before Maya saw the look. Not disgust exactly. Classification. Like her body had been placed in the wrong room. Julian waited in a small library behind the grooms. Suite, jacket off, bow tie loosened, phone and tablet on a mahogany table. The room had shelves of untouched leather books, a crystal decanter, a fireplace that burned without smoke. On the table sat 2 glasses of water. Neither had been poured from a plastic bottle. "Ms. Brooks," Julian said, standing as she entered. "Thank you for coming back." Maya stopped just inside the door. "I didn't come back for you." Caleb looked down quickly, almost hiding a smile. Julian did not flinch. "Why did you come back?" Maya pulled the silver cufflink from her pocket and placed it on the table. It landed with a small, hard sound. "Because the cake was sabotaged, and a 19-year-old server named Tasha is about to lose her job for it." Julian looked at the initials. Vedvojteve. His jaw shifted. "Where did you find this?" "Baseboard behind the dessert table. Before your bride decided I was tonight's entertainment." The word bride sat between them like broken glass. Julian reached toward the cufflink, then stopped before touching it. "I need to verify this." "Good," Maya said. "You should." He looked up. For the first time, something like respect moved across his face. Before he could answer, the library door opened without a knock. Mrs. Ellison stepped in, tablet hugged to her chest, smile clean enough to pass inspection. "Mr. Hayes, there you are. Vanessa is concerned. Guests are asking questions." Her eyes slid to Maya. "And this worker is no longer authorized in client areas." Maya kept her hands at her sides. Julian said, "She's here at my request." Mrs. Ellison's smile held, but her fingers tightened around the tablet. "Of course. Still, for liability reasons, all incident claims should go through my office." "Then open the kitchen camera feed," Maya said. Mrs. Ellison turned slowly. "Excuse me?" Maya pointed through the wall toward the ballroom. "Camera over the dessert station. Camera by the hallway. Audio board near the band. If I'm lying, you can remove me again. If I'm right, Tasha keeps her job." Mrs. Ellison gave a soft laugh. "That is not how luxury event security works." "No," Maya said. "That's how truth works when rich people haven't had time to edit it." Silence. Cut the room. Caleb froze with one hand over the tablet. Julian's eyes moved from Maya to Mrs. Ellison. "Open the feed." For 1 second, the planner's mask slipped. Not much. Just enough for Maya to see fear step behind her eyes and lock the door. Then Mrs. Ellison smiled again and tapped her screen. "Certainly," she said. "But I should warn you, Mr. Hayes, sometimes cameras create more confusion than clarity." As the first frozen image appeared on the tablet, Maya saw Vanessa standing in the hallway outside the library, no longer smiling, her bare right cuff hidden behind her bouquet. Maya leaned closer to the tablet, not touching it, because Mrs. Ellison looked like the kind of woman who would call fingerprints evidence if it helped her. The camera feed was grainy and wide, showing the dessert station from above. White flowers blurred along the edge of the frame. Servers passed in black jackets, moving fast, heads down. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. Then Maya lifted one finger. Pause there. Caleb tapped the screen. That's Tasha. No, Maya said. Look at the floor. Julian stepped beside her. A faint smear crossed the marble behind the cake table, almost invisible beneath the chandelier glare. Cranberry sauce? He asked. Maya shook her head. Ganache, darker, thicker, came from the pastry repair kit. Only the chef and the planner had access. Mrs. Ellison gave a brittle laugh. This is absurd. You can't identify chocolate from a security camera. Maya looked at her. I can identify what stains a white marble floor after 3 years cleaning behind people who never look down. Julian did not smile, but his eyes changed. He turned to Caleb. Pull the hallway camera. Mrs. Ellison's thumb moved over her tablet too quickly. That angle is often delayed. Then we'll wait, Julian said. While Caleb worked, Maya reached for a linen napkin from the side table, folded it into a narrow strip, and laid it beside the cufflink. If the support pin was pulled, the cake would lean toward the missing anchor. It leaned left. Whoever did it stood on the back right and used their left hand. Julian looked at Vanessa's cufflink again. Vanessa is right-handed. Maya nodded. Most people use their dominant hand for force, but not when they're trying not to be seen. They turn their body away. The room fell quiet. It was not the kind of quiet after a song. It was the kind that came when someone poor explained something too clearly for rich people to dismiss. Julian slid a glass of water closer to Maya. He did not push it into her hand. He just placed it within reach and stepped back. That small distance mattered. Maya took the glass after a moment. Thank you. You're welcome. Mrs. Ellison watched that exchange with a thin mouth, as if basic courtesy had become a security breach. Caleb found the hallway feed. The video stuttered, then sharpened. There was Vanessa near the dessert corridor. Bouquet gone. Lace sleeve lifted slightly, silver cuff flashing on one wrist. A bridesmaid walked behind her, blocking the camera for 2 seconds. When the frame cleared, Vanessa was leaving the corridor with her right hand folded tight against her gown. That doesn't prove sabotage, Mrs. Ellison said quickly. No, Maya said. It proves she was there when your report says only staff entered. Julian turned to the planner. Why did your report say that? Mrs. Ellison inhaled, then gave him the practiced face of a woman who had saved wealthy clients from consequences for 20 years. Because weddings are emotional environments. Brides wander. Staff misunderstand. I write reports that prevent unnecessary damage. Damage to whom? Maya asked. Mrs. Ellison's eyes flicked to her and away. To everyone. Not everyone, Maya said. Just the people with names on buildings. Julian looked at the microphone sitting near the audio board feed on Caleb's second screen. It was the same microphone Vanessa had pushed into Maya's hand. Silver mesh under a white satin ribbon. Can we pull that audio? He asked. Caleb nodded. The band records a backup for livestream sync. At the word backup, Mrs. Ellison's face tightened for less than a heartbeat. Maya saw it. So did Julian. The microphone, the thing Vanessa had used like a leash, had been listening before Maya ever sang. Maya touched the music note at her throat, feeling the tiny pendant warm beneath her fingers. For the first time all night, the object did not feel like something she needed to hide under a collar. Felt like a witness. A knock struck the door. Not gentle. 3 hard hits. Vanessa entered before anyone answered. Phone in one hand, veil dragging behind her like torn smoke. Her eyes went straight to the screen, then to the cufflink on the table. Julian, she said softly, sweetly, dangerously. Our guests are waiting. Behind her, one of the bridesmaids hovered with a phone already raised. On the screen was a paused social media post. Maya's face frozen mid-song under a caption that made Julian go still. Poor caterer crashes rich bride's wedding for attention. Vanessa smiled without showing teeth. Maybe you should see what people are saying before you decide who to trust. The post had already begun to spread. Maya could see the numbers climbing on the bridesmaid's phone. Little hearts and laughing faces multiplying beneath her frozen image like insects under glass. The clip showed only 3 seconds. Maya at the piano, mouth open, guests staring. It did not show Vanessa pushing the microphone into her hand. It did not show the stained sleeve, the laughter, the command. The caption did the rest. Poor caterer crashes rich bride's wedding for attention. Vanessa stood in the doorway with one hand over her heart, playing wounded so perfectly that even silence seemed to feel sorry for her. I didn't want it to go online, she said. But people saw what happened. Maya looked at the phone, then at Vanessa's dry eyes. People saw what you cut. Vanessa's mouth trembled just enough for the bridesmaid's camera. I tried to give you a sweet moment. You took advantage of it. Mrs. Ellison stepped beside her like a witness entering court. From a planning perspective, Ms. Brooks was emotionally unstable after being corrected for singing in a restricted area. Maya almost laughed, but the sound would have helped them. Instead, she turned to Caleb. Open the original livestream folder. Vanessa's eyes flicked to him. Julian, are you really letting her order your staff around on our wedding day? Julian's face hardened, but Maya raised one hand. Before he spoke, I'm not asking him to believe me. I'm asking for the file. That stopped him. It stopped everyone for half a breath. Caleb moved to the laptop. Vanessa took a step forward. There's no need. Everyone already knows what happened. Then the file won't hurt you. Maya said it softly, and that softness carried more threat than shouting. Mrs. Ellison tapped rapidly on her tablet. The backup system may not have completed processing. It records in segments, Maya said. 10-minute blocks if you're syncing to livestream. The band uses wireless lav receivers and one handheld channel. That microphone was live before I touched the piano. Caleb looked at her, surprised. Maya kept her eyes on the screen. My cousin runs sound at church. Same setup, just less flowers and fewer people pretending not to sin. For the first time that night, Julian's mouth almost moved into a smile, but it vanished when his phone buzzed. He checked it and went still. Another message had arrived, this one from the Hayes Foundation board chair. We are getting calls. Is it true your wedding singer incident involved harassment by a former scholarship applicant? Maya saw only part of it, but enough. Vanessa saw too. Her face softened with victory. I didn't want to say this in front of everyone, she whispered. But she's been obsessed with you for years. Those demos she sent your foundation? My father's team flagged her. She probably took this job to get near you. The lie was clean because it borrowed pieces of truth. Maya had sent demos years ago. She had stood near Julian tonight. She had sung at his wedding. Put together wrong, the pieces made a cage. Julian looked at Maya, not with accusation, but with the first flash of fear that the story was bigger than he understood. Maya felt it land anyway. I never knew he heard anything, she said. I didn't even know my application made it past the portal. Vanessa tilted her head. Of course. Mrs. Ellison opened a document on her tablet. We also have an agency note that Ms. Brooks asked specifically to be assigned to this event. Maya's throat tightened. That's false. Is it? Mrs. Ellison turned the tablet around. There was Maya's name, the event title, and a digital request form with her employee ID. Her signature sat at the bottom. Not perfect, but close enough to wound. Tasha's name appeared beneath it as supervisor witness. Maya stared at the screen. Tasha would never sign that, which meant someone had used the staff portal or forced her, or both. Maya reached slowly into her pocket and took out her cracked phone. Send me that form. Mrs. Ellison smiled. Internal documents aren't released to terminated staff. Then take a picture of it, Caleb. Vanessa snapped. Absolutely not. Maya turned the phone camera on herself, not them, and hit record. Her hand shook once, then steadied. My name is Maya Brooks. I am not crashing this wedding. I was assigned by the agency, removed without pay, and now I'm being accused with a document I've never seen. Vanessa stepped forward. Turn that off. Maya kept recording. I'm requesting the original audio, the staff portal login records, and the full hallway footage before any files are deleted. Julian looked at Caleb. Do it. But Mrs. Ellison was already moving toward the door, voice raised for the hallway. Security. 2 guards appeared behind Vanessa. Outside the library, guests had begun gathering, drawn by the rumor before the truth could dress itself. Vanessa's bridesmaid lifted her phone higher. Maya's recording captured the moment Mrs. Ellison pointed at her and said, "Clear enough for everyone to hear." She forged her way into this wedding and attempted to compromise the groom. The words hit the hallway like a slammed door. Maya knew then that this was no longer about a song. The words "attempted to compromise the groom" did not echo in the ballroom. They detonated. For a split second, nobody moved, as if the air itself had been asked to testify. Then phones rose. Not 1, not 2. A wave of glowing screens lifting like weapons. Maya stood in the corridor doorway holding her recording phone steady, even though her hand no longer felt like it belonged to her. Vanessa's accusation hung in the hallway like perfume turned toxic. She forged her way in, Mrs. Ellison repeated, louder now, performing for the crowd gathering behind her. She manipulated staff records and inserted herself into a private event. Maya heard her own name spoken like it had been stripped of human weight. Brooks. Not Maya. Not a person. A liability. Caleb stepped forward instinctively. That's not what the logs. Mrs. Ellison cut him off without looking. Security will escort her out. 2 guards moved in. One of them already had his hand near Maya's arm before Julian spoke. Stop. The single word cracked harder than shouting. Everyone turned. Julian stood in the library threshold, jacket half on, face changed. Not angry, not calm, but sharpened into something dangerous because it had finally stopped trying to avoid the truth. Vanessa turned immediately toward him. Julian, she is recording us. She's creating a scene. No, he said, and walked forward into the corridor. His eyes never left Maya. She is documenting what you're doing. That shift, small but irreversible, changed the physics of the room. Maya felt it immediately. The guards hesitated. Vanessa's smile faltered for the first time all night. But it was too late for relief. The damage had already spread beyond control. A guest in the ballroom shouted, "Is that the caterer from the video?" Another voice followed, "She's the one people are talking about online." Maya's phone vibrated in her hand. Notifications stacked like falling glass. Reposts, edits, commentary. A live stream now showing her face from an angle she had never agreed to occupy. The story was already becoming something else. Not truth. Not lie. A narrative with teeth. Maya lowered the phone slightly, and in that lower angle she saw something on the floor near the service doorway. The music note earring backing she had found earlier, now scuffed, partially stepped on. The clue she had dismissed as coincidence suddenly aligned with everything else. Vanessa's cufflink missing. The broken cake support. The manipulated form. Someone had been placing pieces around her like bait. But not for her. For Julian. Her chest tightened. Julian had seen it too. He looked at the cufflink on the table, then at the livestream feed still running on Caleb's laptop, then at Maya. And for the first time she saw it. He was not only realizing she might be telling the truth. He was realizing he had already allowed the lie to move further than it should have. Vanessa stepped closer to him, voice softening into something intimate for the cameras still filming. "If you do this here, in front of everyone, you will destroy the entire Foundation announcement tonight." That sentence landed differently. Not as threat, but strategy. Maya understood then what Mrs. Ellison had been protecting all along. The event was not just a wedding. It was a public launch for a multimillion-dollar scholarship expansion tied to the Hayes Foundation. A single scandal could collapse funding pipelines built over years. Julian's jaw tightened. For half a second, Maya thought he would step back into safety, into silence, into wealth. Instead, he picked up the cufflink. Where did this come from? He asked again, but now the question was not for Maya. It was for Vanessa. Vanessa did not answer immediately. That hesitation was enough. Maya felt it hit her harder than the guards, harder than the accusation, because silence from the accused was never just silence. It was structure collapsing. Mrs. Ellison tried to speak, but Julian raised a hand without looking at her. Lock the ballroom doors, he said to Caleb. Pull every original file. No edits. No summaries. His voice dropped slightly when he looked at Maya again. And don't let anyone leave until I know exactly what happened in my own wedding. Vanessa's expression finally changed, no longer performance, no longer charm. Something sharper surfaced beneath it. Calculation turning into survival. Maya realized, with a cold clarity, that whatever came next would not be about clearing her name first. It would be about stopping something much larger from being exposed in time. The ballroom doors did not open. They were pulled apart like a wound being forced wider. Caleb stood at the front with his laptop open like a shield, the live stream feed frozen on Maya's face mid-frame. Julian stepped in beside him, and for the first time since the wedding began, he did not look like a groom. He looked like someone who had just discovered a crime inside his own name. Play it from the beginning, Maya said quietly. Her voice was hoarse, but controlled. Vanessa let out a short, incredulous laugh. So now the caterer is directing the investigation? Maya didn't look at her. Start from the kitchen timestamp, 1942. Caleb hesitated only a second before clicking. The footage rolled. Kitchen corridor. Staff movement. Then the first distortion, barely visible unless you knew where to look. Maya pointed. There. That's when the system switches input channels. Julian leaned closer. Why would it switch? Maya exhaled once. Because someone manually inserted an external clip into the live feed buffer. Mrs. Ellison stepped forward fast. That is technically impossible without admin credentials. Maya finally turned to her. Then check who accessed admin credentials at 1941. Silence. Caleb typed. The room felt smaller with every keystroke. Vanessa shifted her weight. This is harassment. I am the bride of this event. And I'm the person your story is about, Maya said, steady now. So let's finish it correctly. The screen updated. A login record appeared. Mrs. Ellison's account. Access granted. Manual override. Export initiated. The room did not react immediately. It took a second for understanding to catch up. Then another second for shock to turn into sound. That's not mine, Mrs. Ellison said instantly. Too fast. Too clean. Julian didn't look at her. Zoom in. Caleb complied. The metadata expanded. Device signature. Tablet ID. Location ping. All tied to the planner's device. Maya stepped closer, pointing without touching the screen. Now pull hallway audio at the same timestamp. The file loaded. Static. Then voices. Vanessa's voice first, low and sharp. Make sure she performs. I want them laughing. Then Mrs. Ellison. We can frame it as spontaneous entertainment. A murmur spread through the crowd behind them like fire finding oxygen. Vanessa turned sharply. That's edited. Maya shook her head once. No. That's raw audio sync. The same system that records your vows. Julian's hand tightened around the cufflink. Continue. The audio kept going. The moment Maya was forced to sing. The laughter. The command. Vanessa's. Second instruction. Clearer now. If she refuses, say she crashed the wedding. The words landed heavier than any accusation. Because they were not interpretation. They were intention. Vanessa stepped forward, voice breaking into anger now. You are taking everything out of context. I was joking. Everyone jokes at weddings. Maya finally looked at her directly. Jokes don't require system overrides. A guest in the back raised their phone higher. Another whispered, That's the bride's voice. Mrs. Ellison moved toward the exit. This is being taken out of proportion. I will not be part of a public defamation. Caleb cut her off. You already are. He clicked again. The final file opened. Camera backup from the dessert station. Full angle. No cut. The cake sabotage played in real time. Vanessa near the table. Her hand on the support pin. A deliberate twist. The cake shifting slowly before the collapse. A collective inhale swept through the ballroom. Vanessa froze. That's not me. Julian's voice was quiet. It is. She turned to him, eyes wide now, losing control of the narrative she had been performing for hours. You're choosing her over me based on a video? Maya stepped forward, holding the cufflink between her fingers. Not a video, a sequence. She placed it on the table beside the livestream screen. Your cufflink, the cake pin, the login, the audio. Every lie needed a matching action. Vanessa's breathing sharpened. Julian, you know me? He looked at her for a long moment. Then at the screen. Then at Maya. I thought I did. Mrs. Ellison suddenly tried one last move. Even if this is true, it doesn't change the fact that she disrupted a private ceremony. Maya interrupted softly. You mean the ceremony where I was assigned, paid, and then erased? That was the final fracture. Because Caleb turned the screen toward everyone. The metadata timeline. Unbroken. Unedited. Impossible to argue with. Julian stepped forward and pressed the pause button himself. The room went silent again. But this silence was different. It wasn't confusion anymore. It was collapse. Vanessa opened her mouth, then closed it. No performance left that could survive the order of evidence. Julian spoke once, clearly. This wedding is over. And for the first time that night, no one asked him to explain. The ballroom did not return to celebration after the truth was revealed. It emptied itself slowly, like breath leaving a body that finally understood it had been wounded. Phones lowered. Conversations collapsed. The live stream ended not with applause, but with silence so heavy it felt like accountability had taken physical form. Maya stood near the center of it all, still holding the silver cufflink between her fingers. No one had asked her to speak again, but no one needed to anymore. The evidence had already spoken in layers no apology could climb over. Vanessa was the first to move, not toward Maya, toward her father, who had just arrived in confusion at the edge of the ballroom. His expression shifting from pride to alarm as he saw the frozen screens and the undone wedding. This is controlled, Vanessa said quickly, grabbing his arm. They edited everything. She manipulated systems. Her voice broke mid-sentence, not from emotion, but from loss of structure. Her father looked at Julian, then at the screens replaying the cake sabotage frame by frame. He let go of her hand. That small motion did more damage than any shouting. Mrs. Ellison tried once more, softer now. There are ways to resolve this privately. We don't need public escalation. Caleb answered instead. It already went public. A notification sound rippled through multiple phones at once. The live stream replay had been clipped, shared, and re-uploaded with the unedited audio now surfacing. Maya watched none of it directly, but she could see its reflection in faces. Shock turning into recognition, recognition turning into something heavier. Responsibility. Julian stepped closer to her. For the first time since the beginning of the wedding, he did not occupy the space of wealth or authority. He looked like a man standing in the aftermath of a decision he could not undo, only answer for. I owe you a correction, he said quietly. Maya didn't respond immediately. She looked down at the cufflink in her hand. VW cold. Heavy. Still real. No, she said finally. You owe Tasha a job she doesn't lose because of this. Julian nodded once. Done. And Mrs. Ellison doesn't get to rewrite another story where someone like me becomes a liability instead of a person. Mrs. Ellison flinched, but said nothing. Julian turned to her. You're suspended from all Hayes Foundation events pending investigation. That landed without drama, but it landed completely. Vanessa let out a sharp laugh that didn't sound like humor anymore. So that's it? You just replace me with her. Maya finally looked at her fully. No one is being replaced. That's the point you never understood. Vanessa's eyes filled with rage, not tears. You ruined everything. Maya stepped forward slightly, just enough for the distance between them to become measurable. You did that when you decided someone's value depends on how easily they can be humiliated. The silence after that was not empty. It was final. Vanessa's father pulled her away without another word. Not defending, not condemning, just ending the public exposure of a private collapse. One by one, guests left the ballroom like a tide retreating from broken ground. Outside, cameras still waited, but the story had already changed direction. Julian remained where he was until only Maya and Caleb stood near him. The foundation announcement, Caleb said quietly. We can still proceed in a controlled statement. Julian shook his head. No controlled statements. He looked at Maya. We rebuild it. Maya hesitated. I'm not your spokesperson. I'm not asking you to be. He paused. I'm asking if you'll help design something that doesn't do this again. That question changed the air more than the verdict had. Maya looked around the empty ballroom. The piano still stood near the far wall, untouched, its keys reflecting chandelier light like water remembering sound. She walked toward it slowly. The music note pendant at her throat caught the light, the same way it had when she first sang, only now no one was laughing. She placed the cufflink on the piano lid. VW next to silence that had finally been answered. Then she pressed one key. A single note. Not performance. Not permission. Just presence. Behind her, Julian watched without speaking. And for the first time since the night began, the room did not ask her to prove she belonged there.